Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Good Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Denny Carter. We will be talking the 5 most polarizing players in summer drafts so far. We'll also be getting into the 5 most polarizing analysts because Denny is forcing us to talk about kickers later in the show. Now, Denny got up an interesting article on the site last week examining kickers, in his words, due for a bounce back in 2021. Listen, you may not like it, but kickers are out there and they are projectable despite what the public thinks.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about kickers in the second half of the show.
Matt Straub here. I hope you've been enjoying the show. We wanted to ask for your help with our show, so we would appreciate you taking our short survey. We'd like to learn a little bit more about our listeners to get advertisers that are more relevant to you. Just visit podlistener.com/edge to take the 5-minute survey. It's completely anonymous and it'll help out the show a lot. Just visit podlistener.com/edge to take the survey. That's podlistener.com/edge.
But first, the 4th of July. My first question, Denny, does a low T male such as yourself even partake in the 4th of July?
Well, I compensate with outfits like this. Red, white, and blue shirts. For those listening, I'm wearing a red, white, and blue shirt. I'm wearing a American flag bow tie that I have for some reason. and but I'm celebrating. And if you don't like it, you can move. That would be my suggestion.
St. Louis, Missouri sends its regards to your KOB shirt. If you don't know what KOB is, folks, Google it. No, as a real American, Denny, I believe, was drinking beers on the river in West Virginia on the 4th of July. Did I get that correct?
I was in West Virginia. Here's something I like about West Virginia. You can buy alcohol, which you can't do in Maryland unless you go to a very specific location known as the Beer and Wine Store. But they have alcohol everywhere in West Virginia, and I appreciate that, and also no gas tax. Yeah, it's a land of freedom, is what I'm saying.
What Denny's saying is you're having a political conversion, is what I believe you're saying.
I'm seeing more eye to eye with Joe Manchin than I thought I would.
I didn't know that Maryland was one of those states with so it's kind of like Canada with the liquor laws, because in Canada, I think aren't the liquor stores like government run in Canada?
You have to
butchering that, but
no, you have to take a test before you buy a bottle of vodka. Yeah, in Maryland, it's very puritanical. We never really got over that here, unfortunately. So yeah, it's very hard, comparatively to Virginia and West Virginia to acquire liquor in Maryland.
I wouldn't know what that's like because, as I mentioned, Missouri is the state of KOB. That's the king of beers, folks. We've always been a beer state, a very German state, and a very Irish state. And like St. Louis, there's 4 or 5 really big local breweries where you can just buy every one of their beers in every gas station, or hair salon. We sell beer at the salon here. The barber shop, of course. I was trying to think of other funny stuff.
But that's very foreign to me. I have to say, as a lifelong Marylander, when I stopped to get gas in West Virginia, and I go into the store, and there's White Claw right there in front of me. And I understand that we're not talking about White Claw. Did I buy some White Claw? I did, and I drank.
Yeah, I would just say, the temperance movement, you lost. It's time to sell beer at gas stations in Maryland. We didn't even get to the real point of what I want to talk about the 4th of July, and that was home fireworks displays. I actually feel like they get a bad rap. As a good host, I'll first let Denny tell me while I'm wrong, but then I think I'm going to defend home fireworks displays.
As an advocate of the nanny state, I want my nanny state to keep mini explosives out of the hands of the citizenry, and it should not be able to be acquired. Why am I able to go? Not in Maryland, by the way. No fireworks in Maryland. But why am I able to
beer, no fireworks, no America,
no freedom, and $11 gas. And anyway, you go to West Virginia or Virginia, and you buy all the fire. You could buy enormous amounts of like legit fireworks, like the kind they use like at the local county display, that are handled by professionals. Here's the thing. Not everybody is a fireworks professional, and they're all liquored up like Mike Vanderjag. I'm referencing a Peyton Manning interview from 20 years ago.
No one's going to know anything about that. But
come on. Anyway,
idiot kicker got himself liquored up. I mean, the fireworks, I one time witnessed, I don't know if folks out there know what the fireworks mortar shells are. They're basically the county grade fireworks. You put them in these tubes and you light a long fuse and it shoots. It's like a giant artillery shell, basically.
Oh my God.
And I one time witnessed, I was probably 13 or 14, a very drunk man put the launcher on his chest and light it. Like his face was just like covered in black soot, and that was like the worst of it for him. But there was someone in Missouri who died doing this like a year or two ago,
right?
And so alcohol. Even some of the stuff is like actual bombs, like actual like artillery almost. But I mean, I enjoy it, to be honest. I haven't done it my entire life. It's because I grew up in Missouri where we have like no fireworks regulations whatsoever. Very comfortable with fireworks. I see people making the dog argument more and more. Like, what happened to American dogs is what I want to say. American dogs need to tough up.
They're so easily triggered.
4 or 5 days a year, you can deal. I mean, the thing is, it's more like 15 to 16 days a year in Missouri where people are shooting off mortar shells 24 hours a day. You can maybe dial it back a little bit, folks. But no, I think the American dog just needs to toughen up. And then back in our grandparents' day, the dogs, they lit off fireworks themselves, and now they go and hide in the basement.
And no one talks about that today. But it's true. My timeline on Twitter is filled every year of this time with dog owners who are pleading, begging people, don't shoot fireworks. First of all, you're being ignored. No one's going to listen to you.
Truly, no. Even nice people ignore you. I mean,
zero people are going to pay attention to you saying stop fireworks because my dog is afraid. I'm a dog owner, and like I told Pat before the show, I'm a dog guy in that I like one dog. I don't like the rest of the dogs, but I do like the one dog.
And he's the rare singular dog guy,
right? and so I get you don't want your dog to be in distress, and I do understand that. I also would say stop asking people to not do fireworks because you'll never get through. It's impossible.
So the root of your fireworks hatred is not the dogs. I don't know really what
it's safety. It's safety. No, we don't want to be. Who was the NFL player who blew off his?
Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yes, JPP blew off his hand. These things happen all the time. People need to be protected from themselves.
These things happen. All right, it's America. These things just happen. So
whatever happened to God's will. That's what.
But. Yeah, I'll just say, American dogs, you need to toughen up. All right, we've talked enough about the fireworks and the 4th of July. We're going to move on to the 5 most polarizing players so far in 2021 fantasy drafts, summer drafts. These are kind of best ball ADPs. These ADPs will change as the summer goes along, especially as more casual drafters, more of the redraft drafters enter the fray. But we'll jump right in with Joe Mixon, who is currently the RB12. By Underdog Fantasy Best Ball ADP. To me, Joe Mixon is like the ultimate. This is another reference the Zoomers won't understand, but Joe Mixon's like the ultimate this time it counts players in the history of fantasy sports. Like this is actually going to be the Joe Mixon year. So I'll begin the question. Denny, does it count this time for Joe Mixon?
It definitely counts. And I will say that this ADP may be a little deceiving because I think in more casual leagues this summer, we're going to see Joe Mixon going as the RB 15, 16 set, maybe up to 20 because of the sting that people remember from last year and years prior. Last year he was again in line for a monster workload and a good offense.
Offense is debatable, but it was fine. It was decent. A good would be a bit of a stretch, I feel like, to apply. Maybe this does feel like a contrarian take as I'm uncorking it right now, but a good would be a bit of a stretch, I feel like, for the 2020 Bengals. It was promising. I'm not sure I would say it was good.
Is loaded with potential.
Yeah, loaded with potential.
All right, so he's back in line again. The coaches are basically, giving us the old CJ Spiller. We're gonna give him the ball till he throws up, a type deal. And his workload increases every time we blurb about it, which I guess is something we should look into. But people are going to fade him to an extent because of the issues from last year, and throughout
it's not just last year. Is the thing,
right?
Is the problem with Joe Mixon? I just, that seemed like a natural seek point. Sorry if I cut you off there, Denny, but his raw half PPR finishes. We know the fantasy past has little bearing on the fantasy future or present, but Mixon's raw half PPR finishes are RB49 last year, of course, RB13, RB10, and RB28. A lot of that's because of injuries, but we can't completely ignore that with Joe Mixon. He's appeared in more than 14 games, only one time.
Mm-hmm.
This is still a bottom 5 to 6 offensive line, maybe a bottom 3 offensive line. To me, those are the valid concerns of Joe Mixon, but Giovanni Bernard is finally gone. Maybe third downs are finally, he's going to be Mr. Unlimited finally on third downs, Joe Mixon.
Right.
And as much as I've been burned by Joe Mixon, every year of his NFL existence, but I do think, RB12, RB13 feels very reasonable to me.
Right.
There's no competition whatsoever for touches in this backfield. He's basically completely unencumbered, and RB12, RB13 almost feels low for me. I'd be comfortable maybe getting him up to like that RB9, 10 range. And I am also on team this time accounts for Joe Mixon, and there's no need for him to be so polarizing this year. That the workload basically speaks for itself.
I can tell you by tracking the mentions every time we blurb about Joe Mixon, he is polarizing. He will continue to be polarizing. Fantasy managers largely write off a player after he disappoints to the extent that Joe Mixon disappointed last season. And if that is all due to injury, which it was, it's not like he played and struggled and got benched and that fell out of favor with the coaching staff. None of that happened. But he is, because of that injury, he is going to be polarizing. And I think the more casual the league gets, the bigger advantage or the bigger value he will be.
I am looking beyond it, but I do understand like the phenomenon of like feeling like you've touched a hot stove with Joe Mixon basically. Sure. And because it's been almost a half decade at this point, and it is difficult to say at any point has Joe Mixon like truly lived up to expectations. And it's all about extenuating circumstances. There's been an alibi every year for that, but it's just, like at some point, certain players, just blow past those limitations. They blow past those like extenuating circumstances. For whatever reason, he has not done that yet, but I do expect Joe Mixon to do that this year. And I agree with Denny. We are pro Joe Mixon's current ADP. Brandon Cooks is the wide receiver 45 right now, I believe, on Underdog. Did I understand this correctly, Denny? Is this true? Could this actually be possible with Brandon, wide receiver 45? It's excessive.
Seems low. Does it seem high to you?
No, it seems extremely low to me.
Right. So
shockingly low.
Yeah, I have him at wide receiver 40, according to FFPC ADP. But so it's around there. So I guess he's probably not going to be as polarizing as the other guys we're going to talk about on this list. But the polarization, I guess, kicks in when you start talking about the environment. And what he's surrounded by, which is probably the worst offense in the NFL, hands down, right now. Can anyone, including Brandon Cooks, thrive in that environment? Is the question. Even if he gets a bunch of targets, even if he's a total target hog, can volume compensate for the lack of skill among his quarterbacks? Honestly, I'm not bullish on starting him in a 12-team league until Tyrod Taylor is out of that starting lineup. Tyrod Taylor is just an absolute killer for the pass catchers in all of his offenses. As much as I like Taylor, respect him, I think he could be fun-ish for fantasy purposes because of the rushing upside. But it won't be until Davis Mills comes in that I'm interested in Brandon Cooks.
You like Taylor, you respect him. You would have done a better job with his pain-killing injection last year. You're an all-around Tyrod Taylor fan.
I
That's
am.
what you're saying.
Mhm.
And I've been buying into a Pac-12 solidarity narrative with Davis Mills. They went to schools that were vaguely close to each other. Brandon Cooks and Davis. This is kind of like the kind of
That's
arguments
reaching.
you have to make.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the joke. That we have to really reach to find like pro Texans arguments. And like you said, you talk about like thriving in like this environment. Brandon Cooks is someone who's been in a lot of really good environments. He's played with multiple of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, like never like fully thrived. Something he was turned in. He was very good, borderline wide receiver one, but another guy who always kind of just like left you wanting more. It's like the question if he did that in like those crazy good environments, how will he really fare? Like this awful doldrums bottom two environment. But I really do think this is just like the case. I mean, the targets have to go somewhere. And what is it going to be? Kiki Cutie, Randall Cobb, maybe Isaiah Coulter. We're still out here, folks. The Isaiah Coulter fans. I mean, Chris Conley.
There are dozens of us.
Yeah, there are dozens of us. They have to go somewhere. And I think you said wide receiver 40. I mean, I've seen wide receiver 45. Anything beyond – I find it very hard to believe Brandon Cooks won't be a top 36 receiver, basically.
I think that it'll bump up. Yeah.
I think it'll go up, and I'm going to just adopt the pro Brandon Cooks line. I mean, this is the all. I mean, maybe it's just too simplistic analysis, but like the targets, they have to go somewhere. He is the only option, essentially. He's being used a little differently as his career progresses. I mean, he's not just like a pure like field stretcher anymore, if he was ever even that. And I just think I have a very, very hard time seeing how he could finish outside the top 36. Meaning, in my mind, he's a wide receiver 3.
He's not gonna hurt you too much at that ADP if it starts to tick up, which I think it will. Once training camp starts and once the preseason starts, then he could be in position where you really will have to make a choice and really will have to weigh his environment. Can anybody do well statistically in this abomination of a Houston offense? It really might. And John Daigle has made, the point very eloquently on this show, that we're looking at like maybe like an all-time worst team, as far as skill position players go, as far as, total roster construction goes. This team, even in an expanded season, might be a 1 or 2 win kind of team. So like, are we drafting anybody, from that team? Even when I get Philip Lindsay, like in the 15th round, I'm like, what am I doing? Why do I want to do this to myself?
I'm shocked. You need to be more pro Philip Lindsay. I mean, this guy, he's gonna get 1,200 yards from scrimmage. It's free money and 0 RB. The Texans too, they're gonna be saved. They're not gonna be an all-time bad team because of their investment in their special teams, where they signed 15 pure special teamers. They signed the Texans quite legitimately signed 7 to 8 core special teamers. Of one of the more stunning free agency approaches I've ever seen in my life. And
they could actually have more special teams touchdowns than offensive touchdowns.
We're not gonna stop the run. We're not gonna run the ball. We're not gonna stop the pass. We're not gonna pass the ball. But we are going to play the hell out of special teams, and we're going to get 1 to 2 victories that way.
We're going to do this right, the old school way, which is to force fumbles on punts, recover them, and go for touchdowns. That's what they did, back in the day. That's what the Texans are.
I was going to say, David Culley has been studying lots of 1895 Yale tape, and for how to get the most out of this roster this year of the special teams. But yeah, I mean, just all that. I was thinking, who's a single receiver can you off the top of your head name a single receiver Tyrod Taylor's had a rapport with?
Sammy Watkins, but even
yeah. But I was hoping you wouldn't remember, but yeah, well, he did have a rapport with Sammy. I was hoping you wouldn't remember, but he did.
I remember because I recently did a little research into it, but it was only because of huge splash plays that Watkins was able to be like a fantasy thing that season 2015, I think, in Buffalo.
It was 2015.
And he was very good, but again, the volume wasn't really there for Sammy Watkins. It was just every week it was a 60-yard touchdown from Taylor.
Yeah, and it was those huge splash plays, and that's something the past few years of Tyrod Taylor's career, those don't really exist anymore. He's become a very check down, station to station, very unaggressive passer. So it just doesn't seem like he's going to be the one to bring like the big play life out of Brandon Cooks. And so, by the way, Sammy Watkins led that 2015 Bills attack. There's no way I could probably give you 15 guesses and you wouldn't guess who led the 2016 Bills in receptions. Wow. So I'll just tell you it was Charles Clay. If you remember
Charles Clay, man. Remember how the Dolphins wanted Charles Clay to be like their entire franchise?
They did, yeah. He was multiple Super Bowl titles with H-back Charles Clay in Miami, going into the Ring of Honor. It was a great signing,
incredible,
by the Miami Dolphins. CeeDee Lamb, this is the next polarizing player, and I don't know if he's actually polarizing. I'm not seeing like a ton of debate about CeeDee Lamb on Twitter, but I feel like he should be polarizing. Denny and I did some great prep before the show, by the way. We're not pulling from the same ADP sources, apparently. But on Underdog Best Ball Drafts, I'm seeing wide receiver 13 for CeeDee Lamb.
Same.
And wide receiver 14 for Amari Cooper. Is there any justification for CeeDee Lamb to be going ahead of Amari Cooper other than we think he's awesome?
Right.
Which he is. But, yeah, I mean, so where are we at with CeeDee Lamb, Denny?
We obviously, as a collective, can't decide who the number one receiver in Dallas is. Otherwise, that player would be going as probably the wide receiver 8.
I mean, I would say the number one receiver in Dallas is probably the number one receiver in Dallas, which is Amari Cooper.
I would too.
I don't see how like this has really become a debate and like that he's been dislodged. But anyways, continue, Danny.
Amari Cooper absolutely dominated targets when Dak Prescott was healthy last year for 4 games. It wasn't close. It's not like they were neck and neck. CeeDee Lamb was taken off the field more than we would have wanted to see as a pure slot wideout. Now, apparently, he's being used across the formation. I guess I'll buy into that. But at this time of year, everybody is being used across the formation, including, by the way, Michael Gallup. So, I don't know how much stock you can put into something like that. I don't know. It seems to me that CeeDee Lamb is being drafted at his fantasy ceiling. Like best case scenario. Yeah, best case scenario, the pick's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But it's not going to be tremendous. It's not going to be a steal. Of course, you're not stealing many guys at that sort of ADP, but still, I do think people are overdrafting him a bit.
And like you took everyone being Dalton Schultz is getting reps on the boundary in Dallas. Right. Everyone's being used. No, he's not. But you're basically at wide receiver 13. I mean, you're almost saying like we're going to get like a 2020 Justin Jefferson season out of CeeDee, which is not impossible, but like it's within the range of outcomes. Like you said, that's like at the absolute ceiling of his range of outcomes. And it's good that he's being used all over the formation because there was very uncreative usage of CeeDee Lamb. Like a typecasting was literally 93% of his snaps. So that was like kind of the bare minimum for him to take the next step. That the Cowboys need to start moving him around more creative usage. He was coming, like you said, when Amari was there last year, he was dominating. When Dak Prescott was there, last year, Amari was dominating targets. That was when CeeDee Lamb was like learning the NFL game. So we can kind of maybe throw that sample size in the trash, but yeah, it's just, it's again, I'm making like a very simplistic argument here, but it's like with two, I mean, this 3-headed monster, I don't see how anyone could decide CeeDee Lamb is going to be like the wide receiver 13 and just like how he's going to get enough targets. I would say his ADP is a little more realistic in terms of some of the consensus ADPs I've seen, more like wide receiver 18 to 20, which is probably maybe we're quibbling because I think his floor probably is like around wide receiver 20. So it's like a wide receiver 13. Like really that excessive. I just don't see how it happens.
Right. I mean, and we've seen, teams, high octane offenses with narrow target trees produce 2 wide receiver 1s in 12-team leagues. We've seen that happen. It's fairly
common.
Yeah. And
there's just so many. It's not a narrow offense at all. Like it happened last year, basically with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. And one of the most narrow offenses in the NFL. This is about as unnarrow as it gets when you throw in Michael Gallup. You throw in Dalton Schultz, the returning Blake Jarwin, Zeke, no matter what, is going to catch 40 to 50 passes. I mean, even Tony Pollard is going to command targets. That 5th round receiver, Simi Fehoko or whatever, mouths to feed in this offense.
The part that's missing is the narrow target tree. And you don't have that. This is not Thielen and Jefferson. It's not back in the day, it's not Roddy White and Julio Jones, it's just, or even Julio and Ridley for 1 year. So I do think that that's the missing element. If you miss on CeeDee Lamb at the ADP, I still, I don't think anybody thinks that's going to sink your team.
No.
But, if you look at guys going around him, I think that they might have a path, a volume-based path to higher upside.
Yeah, where there's much more safety, but also like similar upside is kind of the thing. So like, why not start like Mike Evans is going to behind CeeDee Lamb, Julio Jones, Robert Woods, Chris Godwin. I mean, I guess I can see the argument for CeeDee Lamb being like the more explosive, more higher upside fantasy package there, but I don't know.
McLaurin and CeeDee Lamb are going neck and neck. I always have to choose between those two in drafts, and I usually side with McLaurin. So because I just think that he has a better path. Michael Thomas is going right alongside CeeDee Lamb. Again, I think he has a clear volume-based path to better fantasy numbers. And I know that seems strange. I mean, Michael Thomas seems like yesterday's news, and CeeDee Lamb is like CeeDee Lamb's the next big thing, and people don't want to miss out. It's a case of like preemptive FOMO.
Yes.
You don't want to pass on CeeDee Lamb and then him go off in week 1 and you think, oh my God, what have I missed? I get it.
It's curious that you're in on Terry McLaurin despite Adam Humphries now being on the Washington football team and going to dominate targets.
You have to adjust the ranks. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to put a bow, I feel like I'm not making a very I'm making like basically a gut argument on CeeDee Lamb. I feel like, well, there's no way he can do this, which kind of was like the extent of my argument. But like, I also feel like that's the extent of like, I feel like the pro CeeDee Lamb argument is basically just that he's awesome, which he is. But I just don't think the volume is going to be there is kind of what it boils down to for me.
Are you tired of wasting time making trips to the grocery store, waiting in checkout lines, and overpaying for groceries every week? We thought so. Luckily, there's a better way. Misfits Market takes the hassle out of grocery shopping by delivering fresh, organic produce and sustainable groceries straight to your home at prices up to 40% less than traditional grocery stores. You'll get access to exclusive weekly savings on peak season organic produce, high-quality meats and seafood, and sustainably sourced pantry staples like snacks, pasta, and grains, plus keto-friendly and gluten-free foods. Do your weekly shopping in just minutes with Misfits Market, all with no service fees, membership fees, or commitments. Become a free member today and get $15 off your first order through July 24th. Just go to misfitsmarket.com and use code GROCERY15. That's promo code GROCERY15 for $15 off your first order. Misfits Market is not available in all 50 states. For more info, visit misfitsmarket.com.
Our draft guide is now live on NBCSportsEdge.com/win. Get an edge on draft day with our draft guide that is packed with hundreds of player profiles, rankings for every format, projections, tiers, mock drafts, including new mock drafts that we'll be adding every week of the summer, custom scoring, our ADP trend report tool, and so much more. Use promo code SAVE10 to get 10% off. That is SAVE10 for 10% off. I mean, Denny, we're not going to comp you the draft guide. So if you want the draft guide, use that promo code SAVE10 for 10% off, Denny.
I will.
We're going to stay in Dallas with our polarizing players. I just made a very well-reasoned argument for why CeeDee Lamb is being drafted too high. Now we're getting to Ezekiel Elliott, RB6, who Denny assures me it lights Twitter aflame anytime his name is mentioned. Give us the case here with it. What's going on with Ezekiel Elliott?
Yeah, so not to base the entire show on the Twitter mentions.
Twitter is real life, as everyone knows.
NBC Sports Edge account, but when we do blurb about Zeke, people are very torn between saying that he is finished and they will literally never draft him, no matter where he falls in the draft, to saying, I can't wait to draft him at his ADP. Now he's going right now. I have him at running back 6, and right before Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, right after Saquon Barkley. He's like completely locked in to a dominant workhorse role in an excellent offense. And they're getting, you know, offensive line pieces back that they were missing for some or much of last season. I know we're not reading too much into offseason chatter, but Dallas coaches seem to acknowledge this spring and summer that Zeke fell off last year. Like whatever it was, injuries, lack of prep, COVID, whatever, he didn't have it like he did in previous seasons in 2020, and it showed. And it seems, you know, that he has gotten back on track this summer, as his running backs coach said so. So you got to believe that.
You got to believe it.
But his running back coach was very like candid, saying he had slow feet, you know, slow reaction time. He didn't have breakaway speed. You know, and
everyone knows that comes back as you get older too.
He's 26. He just turned 26. Turned 20. Or he's turning 26 like this week.
He's not a 34-year-old softball player such as myself. That is
exactly. No, and you're finished, by the way.
I'm not quite finished. I'll say that.
So he, you know, his ADP is very high. It's going to remain high, but there are going to be people who utterly write him off, which is crazy.
It is crazy, just because another thing, the very savvy fantasy analysts cite all the time is total points. You know, total points just make a lot of sense, folks, to cite over average points. But like, so in Ezekiel Elliott's worst season ever last year, he was the RB9 by total points, which just speaks to the fact that he stayed on the field, because he always stays on the field. And his worst case scenario season, he was the RB15 by average half PPR points. So definitely not what you drafted him as, but definitely not killing your team. And there's just so much certainty here with the role. And you know, there was a lot of extenuating. I mean, he caught the coronavirus during the summer, and there were rumors, like whispers, that he just didn't have his wind last year. And now he's back in Cabo shape, you know, back in the best shape. He's in the best shape of his life, like the fourth time in like 5 or 6 NFL seasons. He is someone who's frequently in the best shape of his life. I have noticed with the Zeke Elliott narratives, but he's just so in an offense where we were talking about with CeeDee Lamb, like there's so many mouths to feed. Like what is like the true one certain piece here? It really is Ezekiel.
It's him.
And there's just no debate. I mean, Tony Pollard's not going to be stealing carries. I mean, maybe he will like a little bit. But,
no, he won't. No, I mean, unless they dramatically change the way that they use Pollard. That's the thing is people will cite, well, Pollard's there. Pollard's good. Pollard's better. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Pollard's better. He's not going to see the field. Unless it's to spell Elliott, or if Elliott goes down. Tony Pollard's 9th or 10th round ADP is outrageous. I hate it so much because I want it to be lower. But no, I mean, Pollard is not a reason to fade Ezekiel Elliott.
No, and I will say, like CeeDee Lamb, like I didn't like the context of where he's being drafted. I just like don't get it, because there's so many similar people with similar upsides, not to mention more certain floors. With Zeke, I will say the two backs going behind him are Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers, and like, if you want to make a pure ceiling bet, I mean, I think it's safe to say that Taylor and Akers both have like their range of outcomes. Like their best 2021 is probably a lot better than Zeke's best 2021, but they're just still so much more uncertain. And Zeke is just basically too big to fail. And he's one of those running back. You don't have to like it basically, but there's just no way. I mean, there's almost 0% chance he finishes outside the top 10 in total points. Very little chance he finishes outside the top 12 in like average points, and a very good chance he finishes in the top 4 or 5, as he does basically every year until last year. So I think Zeke is just too big to fail, and I approve of RB6.
And what you said earlier about running back 9, is that what you said?
He was it's by total points, which obviously is a highly flawed metric. But it's because he never misses games. He stayed, and that was with a missed game, by the way.
He sees a ton of snaps. Yeah, that's what that means. Too big to fail means even if he stinks, he's a top 10 running back.
Yes, exactly. So whatever. You don't have to like it, but Zeke Elliott is going to be an RB1 yet again. Final polarizing name on our list is Jalen Hurts, who an underdog best ball fantasy draft is currently going as the QB8. It's a little more realistic in like some of the early redraft ADPs. QB9 on Yahoo, he's a QB12 on CBS, but in Denny, QB8 for a quarterback with 148 career attempts on a team that's probably going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick. Where do we stand on this?
We are skeptical, and by we I mean I am skeptical that Jalen Hurts is going to start a bunch of games this year. I think he should. I think he showed enough. First of all, he showed enough in college, which was kind of overlooked. And then last year,
overlooked by his own college team, which allowed him to transfer to Oklahoma.
Right. And the team last year that he took over an Eagles offense that was decimated by injury, just terrible overall, terrible offensive line, as Carson Wentz could tell you. So and he did statistically, I can't speak to the film. I've never watched football. I've only watched it in ones and zeros on my screen. But I've been meaning to tell you that, by the way. But
you're fired. But it's fine.
What can you do? But Hurts, I think, performed admirably, and he was rewarded by a new head coach who doesn't seem all that enthused
Not
about.
a huge fan.
Right, Sirianni is kind of came in and said, I've heard of him. I've heard of Hurts. I know he's on the roster. We're gonna bring in Joe Flacco. See what happens. He's not messing around, by the way. I really don't think he's messing around, Joe Flacco.
I do think he is, but
he said we have a system. And if the quarterback can't fit the system, we have issues. That could be a problem.
Yeah, he didn't sound like a big fan of QB keepers or read options or RPOs, Nick Sirianni, but I think the reality is just going to smack him in the face that I think the offense will be a Jalen Hurts offense. I do think they're going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick, but I don't think Hurts will really be bad enough to get benched because, like, what is the alternative? And why? I guess you could say why bench him if you're chasing like a high pick. I mean, I guess maybe you could execute like the Joe Flacco order 66 or whatever, like guarantee that you get the number 1 overall pick. But Jalen Hurts is somewhat like I'm going to bet on the dual threat, even with like the very uncertain team situation, the very uncertain, like, again, like, hasn't really played much NFL football, Jalen Hurts, but I'd rather bet on him than Joe Burrow returning from the torn ACL. I would rather bet on him than Tom Brady having yet another age 1000 outlier season. I'd rather bet on him than Ryan Tannehill. I'd rather bet on him than Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers even. It's just like, again, and like, even if he's a total dud, it won't sink your season, as we know, in normal redraft. You'll just start streaming quarterbacks, or you'll find a quarterback on the wire, a weekly plug and play. So QB, it's high for the profile in a vacuum, but with his skill set and just the range, the board, the quarterbacks he's being drafted around, I'm comfortable with the QB8 bet on Jalen Hurts.
I think when you get into Superflex and 2 QB is when you start talking about
the stakes get higher there, which
really having to make a call on a guy like Hurts. See, one quarterback leagues, it won't hurt that much if he gets benched or
which
whatever.
Which is still
happens.
the vast majority of leagues,
right?
Even though we don't agree with that, it's still the vast majority of leagues.
Like, I'll tell you, like Scott Fishbowl, which starts today. Apparently already started to check the league.
You timed out, Denny.
Yeah, well, I mean, but in that kind of format, Hurts matters a lot, and you're really going to have to be confident that Nick Sirianni figures out who Jalen Hurts is over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, Denny, you timed out, and it took from your queue, and it was all kickers. Now that you can flex kickers in the Scott Fish Bowl.
So you said I took Greg Zuerlein first overall.
It was Justin Tucker because already a few kickers had already been taken.
Okay.
So you timed out and Jalen Hurts, highly volatile Scott Fish Bowl player.
Mm-hmm.
I just made a kicker joke. We are running out of time, but we're going to touch on your kickers article real quick.
Okay.
So we had a lot of fun talking polarizing fantasy players. And again, but folks, you don't hear the kicker talk. It's a free country. We're 38 minutes into the pod. You can just turn it off now. We're going to look at the metrics and how many people, depending on the number of people that tune out of the pod, Denny could be fired. So just take that into consideration. Denny, take us through the kicker art. You say everyone thinks kickers are not projectable or it's totally random, and that is false, isn't it?
It is. And please stay tuned. I have a family. 4for4.com's Jennifer Eakins has a great piece debunking the myth that kicker scoring is completely random, which is, a fairly mainstream thought among fantasy managers. I linked to that in the piece, which is headlined "NFL Kickers Due for a Bounce Back in 2021." Now, headline writing is hard with kicker stuff. I think harder than most positions. Let me tell you what the article is really about. Okay, now that you've tuned in, this is what the article is about. The average team kicked a field goal every 195 yards of offense last year. Okay, so some kickers attempted a lot more field goals than we would have expected per their team's offensive yardage production last year. Among those were the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Falcons, the Bengals, the Broncos. List goes on. You can check it out. Those are teams that, for lack of a better term, got kind of lucky with field goal attempts in 2020. And therefore you have Jason Sanders from the Dolphins as the number one kicker overall, due mostly to the fact that he had a ton of opportunity, which is the only thing that matters with kickers. Greg Zuerlein had 10 more field goals than we would have expected, according to the Dallas offensive yardage. So he finished very high as well. The thing to pay attention to, I think mostly the most actionable part of this is to look at teams that were under expectation for field goal attempts, which of course I list on in this piece too. And I have a take actually on Justin Tucker in the Lamar Jackson era. Are you ready for this, Pat?
I am ready to have my face melted off.
He's not returning to elite status as long as Lamar Jackson is the quarterback, and as long as
you're fired,
as long for the fourth time in this show, and as long as the Ravens are an aggressive, analytically driven offense, which they have been in the 2 years that Lamar Jackson has started for the team. You look at Tucker's attempts after Jackson took over the offense, they've dropped, they've gone way down. I just don't see a scenario where that comes back up. Is Justin Tucker great? Is Justin Tucker maybe the greatest kicker ever? Yes. And he kicks the ball a long way and he's very accurate, but none of that matters if he's not getting attempts or a lot of attempts. So what I'm saying is cool it on the kickers. You're not getting advantage by grabbing Justin Tucker or Younghoe Koo or anybody way earlier than everybody else is taking their kickers.
So as much as you love kickers, you would still never advocate for like the round 13, round 14 kicker. Right. What you're saying.
Right. Say you have a 16 round draft and you're like, oh, I can get an edge here. I can get Koo in the 13th. You're not. In fact, Koo has a ton of red flags going into this season. And I take no pleasure in reporting this. I don't want to say it. I don't want to be the one to say it. But Koo, Blankenship, Sanders, a bunch of kickers from last year, we need to be a little bit wary of. One guy, and the cover guy on this article, one guy who I'm all in on.
Hey, give us the kicker sleepers. That's why, if we're still listening, that's why we're listening, Denny.
Two guys. Here we go. Tyler Bass from the Bills.
It's a good one.
And I can't remember his name, and I'm looking up. Matt Prater.
The kicker, the guy who's now in the Cardinals, correct?
Yes, Matt Prater signed with Arizona. Let's go. He's my guy late in drafts.
So those are Denny's two kicker sleepers. I think I still advocate, unless you're drafting like 5 days before the season starts, to just obviously not draft a kicker.
That's right.
I would draft a defense, play the matchups, find the week 1 matchup for your defense. I would always draft a defense. Still would never draft a kicker. And then, while the league is asleep at the wheel, you add Matt Prater, though, and it's going to be hard to call Matt Prater or Tyler Bass a sleeper. I feel like both will have like ADPs and both will get drafted.
You think Prater will? Well, I'll have to come up with someone a little deeper. Ryan Suckup. There you go.
Who's he on?
He's Bucks.
Who he play for? That's right. He plays for the world champion Tyler Suckup. But yeah, check out the article. It is interesting because I've always espoused that point of view. Kickers are totally random; they're not projectable at all. Mm-hmm. The article is interesting, and
thanks.
We're looking for any edge whatsoever. You might as well at least even if you're not going to like abide by the precepts of the article, you might as well like at least inform yourself and like actually understand what goes on with kickers. And so it was a very interesting article from that perspective. And you are rehired.
I'm rehired. Oh, thank God. Okay. Well, I'm glad we can end on a positive note.
And that is the end of today's show. Check out our draft guide, NBCSportsEdge.com/win. Check out our team preview series, which is still rolling on over at NBCSportsEdge.com. Check out Denny's kicker article. Check out all of Denny's got a treasure trove of off-season content. Been posting something almost every week.
Mm-hmm.
Check out lots of great guest columns from Jack Miller. Got some stuff going on from Pat Kerrane soon. We have a new podcast episode from Pat Kerrane coming up this week. So check it all out on NBCSportsEdge.com. For Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. We will catch you later in the week.